Autumn Days. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Claudia Salto. Autumn Days by Emanuel Geibel from The German Classics of the 19th and 20th Centuries, Volume 7, LibriVox Coffee Break Collection Number 9. Sunny days of the autumn, days that shall make me whole, when a balm for wounds that were bleeding drops silently on the soul. Now seem the hours to be brooding in still, beneficent rest, and with a quieter motion heaves now the laboring breast. To rest from the world's endeavor, to build on the soul's deep base, that is my only craving, in the stillness of love to gaze. O'er the hills, through the dales I wander, where the shy, sweet streamlets call, following each clear sunbeam, whether scorching or kind it fall. There, where the leaves are turning, I hearken with reverent ear. All that is growing or dying, fading or blooming, I hear. Blissful I learn my lesson, how through the world's wide sweep matter and spirit together their concord eternal keep. What blows in the rustling forest takes life from the sun and rain, is a symbol of truth immortal to the soul that can read it plain. Each tiniest plant that blossoms with the perfume of its birth holds in its cup the secret of the whole mysterious earth. It looks down from the cliffs in silence, speaks in the waves' long swell, but all its wonderful meaning the poet alone can tell. End of Autumn Days by Emanuel Geibel.
Excerpt from An Autumn Effect. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bill Moseley. Excerpt from An Autumn Effect by Robert Louis Stevenson from Essays of Travel, LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Number 9. Excerpt from An Autumn Effect by Robert Louis Stevenson. I begin my little pilgrimage in the most enviable of all humours, that in which a person with a sufficiency of money and a knapsack turns his back on a town and walks forward into a country of which he knows only by the vague report of others. Such an one has not surrendered his will and contracted for the next 100 miles, like a man on a railway. He may change his mind at every finger-post, and where ways meet, follow vague preferences freely, and go the low road or the high, choose the shadow or the sunshine, suffer himself to be tempted by the lane that turns immediately into the woods, or the broad road that lies open before him into the distance, and shows him the far-off spires of some city, or a range of mountain-tops, or a rim of sea, perhaps, along a low horizon. In short, he may gratify his every whim and fancy without a pang of reproving conscience or the least jostle to his self-respect. It is true, however, that most men do not possess the faculty of free action, the priceless gift of being able to live for the moment only, and as they begin to go forward on their journey, they will find that they have made for themselves new fetters. Slight projects they may have entertained for a moment, half in jest, become iron laws to them, they know not why. They will be led by the nose by these vague reports of which I spoke above, and the mere fact that their informant mentioned one village and not another will compel their footsteps with inexplicable power. And yet a little while, yet a few days of this fictitious liberty, and they will begin to hear imperious voices calling upon them to return, and some passion, some duty, some worthy or unworthy expectation, will set its hand upon their shoulder and lead them back into the old paths. Once and again we have all made the experiment. We know the end of it right well. And yet if we make it for the 100th time tomorrow, it will have the same charm as ever. Our heart will beat and our eyes will be bright as we leave the town behind us, and we shall feel once again, as we have felt so often before, that we are cutting ourselves loose for ever from our whole past life, with all its sins and follies and circumscriptions, and go forward as a new creature into a new world. It is well, perhaps, that I had this first enthusiasm to encourage me up the long hill above High Wycombe, for the day was a bad day for walking at best, and now began to draw towards afternoon, dull, heavy, and lifeless. A pall of grey cloud covered the sky, and its colour reacted on the colour of the landscape. Near at hand, indeed, the hedgerow trees were still fairly green, shot through with bright autumnal yellows, bright as sunshine, but a little way off the solid bricks of woodland that lay squarely on slope and hilltop were not green, but russet and grey, and ever less russet and more grey as they drew off into the distance. As they drew off into the distance also, the woods seemed to mass themselves together, and lie thin and straight like clouds upon the limit of one's view. Not that this massing was complete, or gave the idea of any extent of forest, for every here and there the trees would break up and go down into a valley in open order, or stand in long Indian file along the horizon, tree after tree relieved, foolishly enough, against the sky. I say foolishly enough, although I have seen the effect employed cleverly in art, and such long line of single trees thrown out against the customary sunset of a Japanese picture with a certain fantastic effect that was not to be despised, but this was over water and level land, where it did not jar, as here, with the soft contour of hills and valleys. The whole scene had an indefinable look of being painted, the colour was so abstract and correct, and there was something so sketchy and merely impressional about these distant single trees on the horizon, that one was forced to think of it all as of a clever French landscape. For it is rather in nature that we see resemblance to art, than in art to nature, and we say 100 times, "How like a picture!" for once that we say, "How like the truth!" The forms in which we learn to think of landscape are forms that we have got from painted canvas. Any man can see and understand a picture. It is reserved for the few to separate anything out of the confusion of nature, and see that distinctly and with intelligence. The sun came out before I had been long on my way, and as I had got by that time to the top of the ascent, and was now treading a labyrinth of confined by-roads, my whole view brightened considerably in color, for it was the distance only that was gray and cold, and the distance I could see no longer. Overhead there was a wonderful caroling of larks, which seemed to follow me as I went. Indeed, during all that time I was in that country, the larks did not desert me. The air was alive with them from High Wycombe to Tring, and as day after day their shrill delight fell upon me out of the vacant sky, they began to take such a prominence over other conditions, and form so integral a part of my conception of the country, that I could have baptized it the country of larks. This, of course, might just as well have been in early spring, but everything else was deeply imbued with the sentiment of the later year. There was no stir of insects in the grass. The sunshine was more golden, and gave less heat than summer sunshine, and the shadows under the hedge were somewhat blue and misty. It was only in autumn that you could have seen the mingled green and yellow of the elm foliage, and the fallen trees that lay about the road, and covered the surface of wayside pools so thickly that the sun was reflected only here and there from little joints and pinholes in that brown coat of proof, or that your ear would have been troubled as you went forward by the occasional report of fowling pieces from all directions and all degrees of distance. End of excerpt from An Autumn Effect by Robert Louis Stevenson. Recording by Bill Moseley, Llano County, Texas, USA. An Autumn Encounter. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bill Moseley. An Autumn Encounter by Kenneth Grahame. From Pagan Papers by Kenneth Grahame. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Number 9. For yet another mile or two the hot dusty road runs through level fields, till it reaches yonder shoulder of the downs, already golden 3 parts up with ripening corn. Thitherwards lies my inevitable way, and now that home is almost in sight, it seems hard that the last part of the long day's sweltering and delightful tramp must needs be haunted by that hateful speck, black on the effulgence of the slope. Did I not know he was only a scarecrow, the thing might be in a way companionable, a pleasant suggestive surmise, piquing curiosity, gilding this last weary stage with some magic of expectancy. But I passed close by him on my way out. Early as I was, he was already up and doing, eager to introduce himself. He leered after me as I swung down the road, mimicked my gait, as it seemed, in a most uncalled for way, and when I looked back, he was blowing derisive kisses of farewell with his empty sleeve. I had succeeded, however, in shaking off the recollection, between the morning's start and now, so it was annoying that he should force himself on me, just when there was no getting rid of him. At this distance, however, he might be anything. An indeterminate blot. It seems to waver, to falter, to come and vanish again in the quivering, heated air. Even so, in the old time, leaning on that familiar gate, are the tell-tale, inwoven initials still decipherable. I used to watch her pacing demurely towards me through the corn. It was ridiculous, it was fatuous, Under all the circumstances, it was monstrous. And yet, we were both under 20, so she was she, and I was I, and there were only we three the wide world over, she and I and the unbetraying gate. Porta Eburnea. False visions alone sped through you, though Cupid was wont to light on your topmost bar and preen his glowing plumes. And to think that I should see her once more coming down the path as if not a day had passed, hesitating as of old, and then, but surely her ankles seem, confound that scarecrow! His sex is by this time painfully evident, also his condition in life, which is as of one looking back on better days, and now he is upon a new tack. Though here on the level it is still sultry and airless, an evening breeze is playing briskly along the slope where he stands, and one sleeve saws the air violently, the other is pointed stiffly heavenwards. It is all plain enough, my poor friend. The sins of the world are a heavy burden, and a grievous unto you. You have a mission. You must testify. It will forth, in season and out of season. For man, he wakes and sleeps and sins betimes, but crows sin steadily, without any cessation. And this unhappy state of things is your own particular business. Even at this distance I seem to hear you rasping it. Salvation, damnation, damnation, salvation. And the jolly earth smiles in the perfect even glow, and the corn ripples and laughs all round you, and one young rook, only fledged this year too, after an excellent simulation of prostrate, heart-broken penitence, soars joyously away to make love to his neighbor's wife. Salvation, damnation, damn! A shifty wriggle of the road, and he is transformed once more, flung back in an ecstasy of laughter, holding his lean sides, his whole form rise with the chuckle and gurgle of merriment. Ho, ho, what a joke it was! How I took you all in, even the rooks! What a joke is everything, to be sure! Truly I shall be glad to get quit of this heartless mummer. Fortunately I shall soon be past him. And now, behold, the old dog waxes amorous. Mincing, mowing, empty sleeve on hollow breast, he would fain pose as the most irresistible old hypocrite that ever paced a metropolitan curb. Love, you young dogs, he seems to croak. Love is the one thing worth living for. Enjoy your present, rooks and all, as I do. Why, indeed, should he alone be insensible to the golden influence of the hour? More than one supple waist, alas for universal masculine frailty, has been circled by that tattered sleeve in days gone by. A throbbing heart once beat where sodden straw now fails to give a manly curve to the chest. Why should the coat survive, and not a particle of the passion that inspired it long ago? At last I confront him face to face, and the villain grins recognition, completely unabashed. Nay, he cocks his eye with a significant glance under the slouch of his shapeless hat, and his arm points persistently and with intelligence up the road. My good fellow, I know the way to the Dog and Duck as well as you do. I was going there anyhow, without your officious interference, and the beer, as you justly remark, is unimpeachable. But was this really all you've been trying to say to me this last half hour? Well, well. End of An Autumn Encounter by Kenneth Grahame. Recording by Phil Mosley, Llano County, Texas, USA.
Section 1, 7 Poems from the Lost Ring and Other Poems. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 7 Poems from the Lost Ring and Other Poems by Carolyn Atwater Mason, selected and recorded by Larry Wilson for Autumn, LibriVox Coffee Break, Collection No. 9. September. The days once more their dainty fare outspread, for Nature, roused from dreams and making good at length the promise of her larger mood, no longer doles us out her wine and bread in scanty sort, but pours for us instead her spicy sweet September. Now the blood of high resolve begins again to flood our nerveless souls, and life wakes duty wed. Nature, wise steward, thou art justified, for thou hast kept the good wine until now, against this tardy bridal, this late vow, pledging our days to toil while days abide. Where are the fallow fields, that we may sow and reap the latter harvest ere we go? October. Of all the 12 bright months, thou art the one best loved of Nature, that with partial care she bids her subtle elements prepare this robe of beauty for her favourite son, this coat of many colours, deftly spun from tissues of the rainbow, from the rare brave hues of sunset when the day dies fair, from misty purple dawnings ere begun, is the swift, beautiful coming of the light. O princely garniture, in dun or ermine or soft greenness dressed, beholding thee thus royally bedight, envy thy state, thou favourite of the year, darling of nature, month without a peer. November. Like a late watcher, tired and sleep inclined, yet patient at her post and smiling still, the year keeps vigil. Look you where you will, in all her wide domain, you shall not find her hand has lost its cunning. Still the wind flays its soft descants, still each rippling rill goes singing seaward, while on every hill the sun pours benediction bland and kind, as blessed the summer. Still the crickets hide in warm grass, and ever and anon a bee reels by, store laden from the lawn, where bloom late flowers, alert and open-eyed. How fair, they sigh with me, and oh, how dear, this lingering sweetness of the dying year! October ineffable. I am out in the free woods once more, with whispering boughs o'erhead, strange influences round me steal. And yet what deepliest I feel must ever be unsaid. These glowing, glowing autumn hours, these gorgeous wildering days, this dainty show of painted flowers, as though with dusky golden showers the air were all ablaze. This living, shining, burnished wood, decked with 1,000 dyes, its strong ribs laced with crimson sheen, and tricked with gold and glittering green, like kingly tapestries. This tangle roof of braided light above me richly flung, these glimpses of the sky's soft blue, this quivering sunshine melting through, this wide earth glory hung. How shall I utter all I would? Alas, my struggling soul, it strives to voice these glorious things, as strives a bird on broken wings to struggle to its goal. Autumn. Oh, the lovely autumn days, when the earth is all ablaze with 1,000 kindling dyes, and a misty glory lies all about our common ways. when a hush is in the air, like an inarticulate prayer, Nature underneath her breath giving thanks for life in death. Death so beautiful and rare, life itself were not so fair. Spring is tardy, changeful, fleet. Summer comes with dust and heat, waiting on her flying feet. But the peaceful autumn days, blessed and blessing all her days, she it is who mellows well dainty, luscious fruits that swell from the laggard buds of spring and the summer's blossoming. Ah, they need her wholesome touch, lest they ripen overmuch. So with tempered breath she cools all the fevered air, and schools nature to her own wise roles. Then, her labour done, she pours out her bountiful rich stores, lighting up on every hill altar fires, and kindling still flames of sacrificial thanks over all her viny banks. Spring is tardy, changeful, fleet. Summer comes with dust and heat, but the peaceful autumn stays, blessed and blessing all her days. In Autumn. Put on your beautiful garments, O toiling earth, and rest. The goal is won, and the toil is done. And now you may don your best tour robe of purple and scarlet, your tassels and plumes of gold, the misty sheen of your veil of green, and your mantle's crimson fold. Earth so glad and so fruitful, O nature so brave and true, I would that we were as wise as ye in the works we have to do. We loiter and waste, we sow not or scatter our seed in vain, for the stony field must be wrought to yield its treasure of golden grain. Put on your beautiful garments, O toiling soul, and rest, faint heart of mine, to that call divine. Be all thy powers addressed, sowing beside all waters. Faithful in that which is least, constant and still, do the Master's will, till the time of toil has ceased. Then the peace that shall come, and the gladness, the service that shall be rest, and the plaudit won of that word, well done, and the Master's, come, ye blessed. O earth, in sweet fruition, rejoice and be glad, but this, the joy of a soul that has reached its goal, is a deeper, holier bliss. October Woods. A mood. Blazing woods lit up with splendors rare, to sing your state methinks were but akin to his essay whose mocking violin sang burning born. These bright, bright robes you wear have charms too perilous, because they bear the seal of death. If only we could win your old look back, and stand once more within your aisles of greenness. Ah, this show and glare but mean our banishment. Dear doomed woods, where we have wandered the gay summer long, soft flickering sunshine, and the wild bird's song, making like Eden your sweet solitudes. A flaming sword guards all your gates in guise of light and beauty. Farewell, Paradise. End of 7 poems from The Lost Ring and Other Poems by Carolyn Atwater Mason. Selected and recorded by Larry Wilson.
The Autumn Woodpath. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Autumn Woodpath, from Where Town and Country Meet by James Buckham. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, No. 9. The woods are never so full of interest and fascination as when the first frosts have touched the leaves and purified the crisp, nipping air, and filled the forest with that expectant hush that follows the insect hum and bird music of summer. Then, as one walks along the quiet woodpath, he experiences again something of the vanished child sense of fairyland. The forest aisles are full of mystery. The glint of sunshine in nearby glades and the flicker of falling golden leaves mingle like fact and fancy, and in the hush and glimmer and beauty of the scene one expects to see anything, from fairies dancing on the moss, to princes and princesses riding suddenly across the path, with plumes and jewels and jingling bridles. An enchanted place is the October wood. You wonder at the change that has come over it since the thrush and the vireo and the warbler packed their flutes and started slowly and silently southward. Strange how grateful it is to the ear, sometimes, not to hear the birds singing. But it is because you have heard them singing all summer long that you can be pleased with October's silence. The sweetest song needs silence after it to fill the measure of its delight. But the autumn woods have the bird cries, though not the bird songs. You will not have walked far along the wood path before you are startled by that feathered alarmist, the blue jay. He hears you, or rather divines you, afar off, and makes the woods ring with his hoarse scream of warning. By and by you see him, plunging from tree to tree in short, scolding flights, absurdly indignant that you should have invaded his privacy, even so long after the nesting season is over. His is the cry that you will oftenest hear in the woods from now until snow flies. It is one of the audible accessories of an autumn walk, and though the jay's voice is essentially harsh, I have learned to love it because of its associations. This bird has two distinct cries. You could never call them songs, either in quality or variety of sound. One is the penetrating, far-sounding, raucous scream that he uses when doing self-imposed sentinel duty. The other is a thin, short, metallic cry that sounds in the distance like the ringing of a small hammer on a blacksmith's anvil. The latter sound is almost musical, and, with its associations, soon grows to be inexpressibly pleasing to one who loves to ramble at all seasons of the year. Another autumn bird cry, harsh in itself, but softened by surroundings and associations, is that of the crow, a restless bird always, but more than ever so when frosty weather has set in and pilgrimages, both long and short, are in order. He labours over the woods on heavy wing, cawing gruffly as he goes, without apparent reason, unless it be to express his troubled and dissatisfied state of mind. Perhaps he is thinking of the hard times ahead, though heaven knows times are always hard enough for a hearty eater, with such thievish and forbidden tastes as his. No doubt his stomach is empty now, and he knows not where nor how to fill it. Strangely enough, the almost domesticated robin, that has nested in the apple tree close to the house, and cheered us all summer with its flute-like morning and evening song, becomes in October one of the wildest and most suspicious of birds, retiring to the deep woods, and adding its sharp, suspicious, chirping cry to that of the blue jay and the crow. I have seen whole flocks of robins, in October, miles within the heart of an upland forest, where you scarcely ever find them during the spring and summer. Shy, suspicious creatures they are now, taking to wing with great swiftness and clamour before the rambler gets even within gun range of them, as if he would care to shoot such plebeian game if he could. But, like bobolink, who becomes the pot hunter's reed bird in winter, robin seems to aspire to the dignity of becoming a game bird as soon as the shooting season opens, doubtless quite ignorant of the fact that nearly all our northern states by a special law protect his russet body from destruction. As the wood-path climbs a dry, sun-baked ridge we come to a succession of little round hollows, shallow pits in the powdery loam, where that genuine and royal game bird, the ruffed grouse, has lain, like a roadside hen, dusting itself in the sun. A pretty sight it must have been, the large greyish bird, with its alert, trim head, and bright eyes always watchful, tossing the dust with vigorous flirts of the wing far up over its back, and nestling and shifting round and round in the warm hollow. I have seen hundreds of such dusting holes in my rambles through the woods, but only once have I beheld a ruffed grouse actually dusting itself as I have described. It was at noon of a hot September day, and I was lying in the shade beside the wood path, when the cautious bird stole out for its midday bath. It was a hen grouse, trim in body and graceful and quick in every movement. I lay motionless, watching her, for nearly 15 minutes. Then a dog barked at the foot of the ridge, and the grouse was gone in an instant, leaving a few soft feathers swirling down into the dust. How large a part of the life and interest of the woods centres in the birds! Every true nature lover speaks of them first and chiefly when describing his outdoor rambles. Yet there are other creatures and things that win the attention of a rambler by the autumn woodpath. He notes the nibbled shoots of birch and alder, where the rabbit or hare has browsed them by the light of the moon; for these little animals are both night feeders, shy, big-eyed, and big-eared, secretive and cautious, as behoves such tender, toothsome creatures, the chosen prey of man and beast. Here, where the path dips down beside the brook, is a wet, flat stone, just abandoned by a muskrat. I heard his splash as I drew near, that was nibbling a wild parsnip. It would be useless to look for his hole, for it is well hidden under the bank, beneath the surface of the water, and slants upward to some dry, grass-lined nest above the water-line. A little farther along I catch a glimpse of the dark, slim, lithe body of an otter gliding rapidly over the stones to a deep pool, in which he vanishes. No doubt he has been fishing in his quiet, patient way, lying by the water's edge, ready to pounce with claws and teeth upon any unwary trout or minnow that ventured too near. It is curious how averse a fox is to wetting even the soles of his dainty feet. I was walking along this same brook one October afternoon, this time with gun in hand, when a fox came trotting unsuspiciously down to the tip of a little point of land, around which the brook bent like a silver triangle. He looked up and saw me as I was creeping down towards the base of the triangle, though still not quite within gun range. The fox might easily have escaped me and saved his life by plunging through the shallow brook and up the opposite bank into a hemlock thicket. But rather than wet his feet he turned and came scurrying back along the water's edge, as far from me as he could get. It was a fatal bit of squeamishness on his part, for it brought the handsome fellow within range of my gun. I have a rug of his skin under my desk now. I would like to say a word about the flowers one may find, even in October, along the woodpath and scattered over the upland pastures. But already my chapter grows overlong. I may simply name a few of the blossoms I picked last fall between the 1st of October and the 5th of November. Fringed gentian, purple aster, goldenrod, blue toadflax, fall dandelion, Canada violet, spurge, common yarrow, white alder, trumpet weed, witch hazel, moth mullein, knotweed, thorn apple, and ladies' tresses. The autumn woodpath, if you follow it far enough up the hills, comes to an end in a mountain pasture surrounded by a tumble-down rail fence. And here we may fitly leave it, swallowed up in brakes and raspberry bushes. Nobody now living knows where it originally ended, perhaps at some old-time logging camp far up beneath the shadow of Tarhouse's Peak, or perhaps it was part of an Indian trail that never stopped until it had connected Albany with the Algonquin villages on Lake Champlain. End of The Autumn Woodpath by James Buckham. The Coming of Autumn. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Coming of Autumn From The English Countryside, by Ernest C. Pulbrook. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, No. 9. One day, as the fall of the year approaches, we wake to find the sun streaming through our casement, as it has done on fine mornings for several months past, but somehow there is a change. There is a sharpness in the air, and a mellow softness in the sunlight, while a slight smell of decay arises from the damp herbage. It is the first day of autumn. Autumn! To many, far too many, it is one of the saddest words in the language, for in it they see only decay and death, not recognizing that it is really the beginning of new life. There is after all no dead season of the year, and that period which so many regard as the end is the beginning. The plant dies down only to renew its strength for the coming year. The young leaves, forming within the twig, press the old ones out of the way, and so autumn is really the first sign of spring. All through the year some plants are dying, but it is only in autumn, when nature in general goes to sleep for a little time, that it becomes markedly noticeable. When autumn comes with its gales and frosts, the townsman shivers, draws the curtain close, and wheels a comfortable chair to the fire, but the countryman goes out to see the beauty of the landscape. If autumn be the time of nature's death, then she dies amidst a blaze of glory, for unless early gales and heavy rain cause the leaves to fall before their time, no month is more gorgeous than October. It is true that the wild flowers have gone, that the song of the birds is almost hushed and the brilliancy of their plumage dimmed, but we have the tints on the leaves, the wild berries of the hedgerow, and the rich colour of the newly turned earth. There is nothing melancholy about a beech wood in autumn. It flames into a riot of yellow, and red, and orange gold. If a few evergreen trees are to be found in the wood, their dark leaves heighten the effect as the slanting rays of the October sun play on the dying leaves shimmering in the breeze, until the forest seems aglow with molten fire. In spring the white blossom of the wild cherry stood out from the bare branches, providing the only patch of colour in the scene, and now these trees can be picked out by the splash of crimson they make amid the copper of the beeches, the dark green of the sombre pines seeming almost black in contrast. The oaks are not quite so brilliant in their autumn dress, but their russet leaves remain when all the others have gone. In the hedgerow the maples show their presence by their rich yellows, while the tall elms are yellow and orange. In the clearing of the wood the warm brown of the bracken makes broad bands of colour against the dark trunks. Long shadows fall athwart the view where the rabbits sit basking in the sun, their white tails bobbing up and down as they scuttle away when anyone approaches, and some noisy blackbird hurrying off with shrill outcry gives the alarm. The air is very still, and the lightest breeze rustles the leaves and brings them fluttering down in showers, while a sudden gust sends them flying round in eddies. On the common the gorse bushes crackle as the seed pods break, and tall withered stems, topped perhaps with down, are all that remain to tell us of summer. Fungi grow in the damp places, and the hollows are marked by pools of water, while along the common's edge are seen the delicate blossoms of the harebell. In places the hedges are thick with old man's beard, and the falling leaves reveal many a hidden nest. Colour dominates the landscape on a fine day in autumn. Round the homestead are clusters of golden ricks, and the thin column of smoke and the hum which can be heard from afar denote that the thresher is at work. In the apple countries great heaps of golden and rosy cheeked fruit, presently to be used for cider making, decorate the orchards. The dull yellow of the stubbles is turning into rich brown and red as the ploughman with his team of white and brown horses turns the furrows, behind him following a flock of rooks and gulls eager for the grubs and worms he brings to the surface. mingled with his cries as he urges his team onwards, and the jangle of harness as he turns at the end of the field, rises the bleating of the sheep in the fold in the hollow, near which the shepherd's hut has already been drawn into position. As a volley of shots rings out from the wood where the pheasant drive is in progress, all the birds rise in a cloud and wheel round and round the field for several minutes before settling down to their search for grubs once more. There is plenty of work a-doing, for the country has to prepare for the many short days of winter and the coming spring, when the earth shall blossom forth once more. From the root field comes the creaking farm cart laden with swedes, which are being built into a clamp near the shelter of the hedge, while in the thicket the woodman is busy cutting the underwood. Beneath the quick strokes of his hook the bushes are soon cut low, and, if hurdle making is to follow, the sticks are laid in rows all facing one way. Then when October has well advanced the hurdler comes, and under his deft hands the hurdles soon take shape until there is quite a stack. From time to time the cart arrives to take a load to the sheltered hollow in the hills where the fold is being erected for the lambing. Over the meadows flocks of peewits, uttering their mournful cry, wheel and hover, now settling down together, now rising all at once to fly round in a circle before alighting in the same spot. The starlings are busy in the turnip field, searching for fly, while crowds of chattering sparrows fight amidst the hedges or invade the rickyards. Up and down the hedgerows the long-tailed tits swing on the long thin twigs and clamber up the branches, all the while uttering their funny little cries. The squirrels may sometimes be seen laying up their store of nuts and beech mast, but the hedgehog has probably already taken up his quarters for the winter, unless the season be very mild. In some ways the early autumn is the most glorious time of all the year. After a long hot summer the fresh exhilarating days of October act like a tonic on the jaded nerves, and if the summer has been wet and gloomy a fine autumn sometimes follows, trying, as it were, to make up for past disappointments. There is warmth without heat in the autumn sunshine, and it brings out the sweet smell of the freshly turned earth and that damp odour of decaying vegetation which so many dislike. Over the smithy the crimson of the fast thinning Virginia creeper makes even the tiles seem pale in comparison, and the red berries on the holly in the churchyard tell us that Christmas is not far off. The village street is thick with leaves, and on Saturday the children, free from school, sweep them up for the garden. It is only when the sun has set that the sadness of the season is really present. As it sinks slowly into the fast gathering mist, the colour suddenly leaves the wood, and a chill breeze arises, bringing the leaves to the ground. All the rich reds and browns and yellows disappear, leaving only a dull muddy buff behind. The grey twilight steals slowly over the landscape, and from the dead colourless undergrowth arises a smell that has little of sweetness in it, and the damp mist floats over the low-lying ground. It is this sadness of departing day that has given autumn a reputation that it does not altogether deserve. End of The Coming of Autumn, by Ernest C. Pulbrook. Dreams of Manhood. Autumn. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Dreams of Manhood. Autumn, from Dream Life, A Fable of the Seasons, by Donald G. Mitchell, LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, No. 9. There are those who shudder at the approach of autumn, and who feel a light grief stealing over their spirits, like an October haze, as the evening shadows slant sooner and longer over the face of an ending August day. But is not autumn the manhood of the year? Is it not the ripest of the seasons? Do not proud flowers blossom? The goldenrod, the orchis, the dahlia, and the bloody cardinal of the swamp lands. The fruits too are golden, hanging heavy from the tasked trees. The fields of maize show weeping spindles, and broad rustling leaves, and ears half glowing with the crowded corn. The September wind whistles over their thick-set ranks with whispers of plenty. The staggering stalks of the buckwheat grow red with ripeness, and tip their tops with clustering, tri-cornered kernels. The cattle, loosed from the summer's yoke, grow strong upon the meadows new starting from the scythe. The lambs of April, rounded into fullness of limb, and gaining day by day their woolly cloak, bite at the nodding clover heads; or, with their noses to the ground, they stand in solemn circular conclave under the pasture oaks, while the noon sun beats with the lingering passion of July. The bobolincolns have come back from their southern rambles among the rice, all speckled with grey; and, singing no longer as they did in spring, they quietly feed upon the ripened reeds that straggle along the borders of the walls. The larks, with their black and yellow breastplates and lifted heads, stand tall upon the close-mown meadow, and at your first motion of approach, spring up and soar away, and light again, and with their lifted heads renew the watch. The quails, in half-grown coveys, saunter hidden through the underbrush that skirts the wood, and only when you are close upon them whir away, and drop scattered under the coverts of the forest. The robins, long ago deserting the garden neighbourhood, feed at eventide in flocks upon the bloody berries of the sumac; and the soft-eyed pigeons dispute possession of the feast. The squirrels chatter at sunrise, and gnaw off the full-grown burrs of the chestnuts. The lazy blackbirds skip after the loitering cow, watchful of the crickets that her slow steps start to danger. The crows in companies caw aloft, and hang high over the carcass of some slaughtered sheep lying ragged upon the hills. The ash trees grow crimson in colour, and lose their summer life in great gouts of blood. The birches touch their frail spray with yellow; the chestnuts drop down their leaves in brown twirling showers. The beeches, crimped with the frost, guard their foliage until each leaf whistles white in the November gales. The bittersweet hangs its bare and leafless tendrils from rock to tree, and sways with the weight of its brazen berries. The sturdy oaks, unyielding to the winds and to the frosts, struggle long against the approaches of the winter, and in their struggles wear faces of orange, of scarlet, of crimson, and of brown; and finally yielding to swift winds, as youth's pride yields to manly duty, strew the ground with the scattered glories of their summer strength, and warm and feed the earth with the débris of their leafy honours. The maple in the lowlands turns suddenly its silvery greenness into orange scarlet, and in the coming chilliness of the autumn eventide seems to catch the glories of the sunset, and to wear them, as a sign of God's old promise in Egypt, like a pillar of cloud by day and of fire by night. And when all these are done, and in the paved and noisy aisles of the city the ailanthus, with all its greenness gone, lifts up its skeleton fingers to the god of autumn and of storms, the dogwood still guards its crown, and the branches, which stretch their white canvas in April, now bear up a spire of bloody tongues, that lie against the leafless woods like a tree on fire. Autumn brings to the home the cheerful glow of first fires. It withdraws the thoughts from the wide and joyous landscape of summer, and fixes them upon those objects which bloom and rejoice within the household. The old hearth, that has rioted the summer through with boughs and blossoms, gives up its withered tenantry. The fire dogs gleam kindly upon the evening hours, and the blaze wakens those sweet hopes and prayers which cluster around the fireside of home. The wantoning and the riot of the season gone are softened in memory, and supply joys to the season to come. just as youth's audacity and pride give a glow to the recollections of our manhood. At midday the air is mild and soft. A warm blue smoke lies in the mountain gaps. The tracery of distant woods upon the upland hangs in the haze with a dreamy gorgeousness of colouring. The river runs low with August drought, and frets upon the pebbly bottom with a soft low murmur, as of joyousness gone by. The hemlocks of the river bank rise in tapering sheens, and tell tales of spring. As the sun sinks, doubling his disk in the October smoke, the low south wind creeps over the withered tree tops, and drips the leaves upon the land. The windows, that were wide open at noon, are closed, and a bright blaze, to drive off the easterly dampness that promises a storm, flashes lightly and kindly over the bookshelves and busts upon my wall. As the sun sinks lower and lower, his red beams die in a sea of great grey clouds. Slowly and quietly they creep up over the night sky. Venus is shrouded. The western stars blink faintly, then fade in the mounting vapours. The vane points east of south. The constellations in the zenith struggle to be seen, but presently give over and hide their shining. By late lamplight the sky is all grey and dark. The vane has turned 2 points nearer east. The clouds spit fine raindrops that you only feel with your face turned to the heavens. But soon they grow thicker and heavier, and as I sit, watching the blaze, and dreaming, they patter thick and fast under the driving wind upon the window, like the swift tread of an army of men. End of Dreams of Manhood, Autumn, by Donald G. Mitchell.
Fallen Leaves by Henry David Thoreau. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Peter Yearsley. Fallen Leaves from Excursions by Henry David Thoreau. Autumn, LibriVox Coffee Break Collection No. 9. By the 6th of October the leaves generally begin to fall in successive showers after frost or rain, but the principal leaf harvest, the acme of the fall, is commonly about the 16th. Some morning at that date there is perhaps a harder frost than we have seen, and ice formed under the pump. And now, when the morning wind rises, the leaves come down in denser showers than ever. They suddenly form thick beds or carpets on the ground, in this gentle air, or even without wind, just the size and form of the tree above. Some trees, as small hickories, appear to have dropped their leaves instantaneously, as a soldier grounds arms at a signal, and those of the hickory, being bright yellow still, though withered, reflect a blaze of light from the ground where they lie. Down they have come on all sides, at the first earnest touch of autumn's wand, making a sound like rain. Or else it is after moist and rainy weather that we notice how great a fall of leaves there has been in the night, though it may not yet be the touch that loosens the rock maple leaf. The streets are thickly strewn with the trophies, and fallen elm leaves make a dark brown pavement under our feet. After some remarkably warm Indian summer day or days, I perceive that it is the unusual heat which, more than anything, causes the leaves to fall, there having been perhaps no frost nor rain for some time. The intense heat suddenly ripens and wilts them, just as it softens and ripens peaches and other fruits, and causes them to drop. The leaves of late red maples, still bright, strew the earth, often crimson spotted on a yellow ground, like some wild apples, though they preserve these bright colours on the ground but a day or two, especially if it rains. On causeways I go by trees here and there all bare and smoke-like, having lost their brilliant clothing, but there it lies, nearly as bright as ever, on the ground on one side, and making nearly as regular a figure as lately on the tree. I would rather say that I first observe the trees thus flat on the ground, like a permanent coloured shadow, and they suggest to look for the boughs that bore them. A queen might be proud to walk where these gallant trees have spread their bright cloaks in the mud. I see waggons roll over them as a shadow or reflection, and the drivers heed them just as little as they did their shadows before. Birds' nests in the huckleberry and other shrubs, and in trees, are already being filled with the withered leaves. So many have fallen in the woods that a squirrel cannot run after a falling nut without being heard. Boys are raking them in the streets, if only for the pleasure of dealing with such clean, crisp substances. Some sweep the paths scrupulously neat, and then stand to see the next breath strew them with new trophies. The swamp floor is thickly covered, and the Lycopodium lucidulum looks suddenly greener amid them. In dense woods they half cover pools that are 3 or 4 rods long. The other day I could hardly find a well-known spring, and even suspected that it had dried up, for it was completely concealed by freshly fallen leaves, and when I swept them aside and revealed it, it was like striking the earth with Aaron's rod for a new spring. Wet grounds about the edge of swamps look dry with them. At one swamp, where I was surveying, thinking to step on a leafy shore from a rail, I got into the water more than a foot deep. When I go to the river the day after the principal fall of leaves, the 16th, I find my boat all covered, bottom and seats, with the leaves of the golden willow under which it is moored, and I set sail with a cargo of them rustling under my feet. If I empty it, it will be full again tomorrow. I do not regard them as litter to be swept out, but accept them as suitable straw or matting for the bottom of my carriage. When I turn up into the mouth of the Assabet, which is wooded, large fleets of leaves are floating on its surface, as it were getting out to sea, with room to tack. But next to the shore, a little further up, they are thicker than foam, quite concealing the water for a rod in width, under and amid the alders, button bushes, and maples, still perfectly light and dry, with fibre unrelaxed. And at a rocky bend, where they are met and stopped by the morning wind, they sometimes form a broad and dense crescent quite across the river. When I turn my prow that way, and the wave which it makes strikes them, list what a pleasant rustling from these dry substances grating on one another. Often it is their undulation only which reveals the water beneath them. Also every motion of the wood turtle on the shore is betrayed by their rustling there. Or even in mid-channel, when the wind rises, I hear them blown with a rustling sound. Higher up they are slowly moving round and round in some great eddy which the river makes, as that at the leaning hemlocks, where the water is deep and the current is wearing into the bank. Perchance in the afternoon of such a day, when the water is perfectly calm and full of reflections, I paddle gently down the main stream, and turning up the Assabet, reach a quiet cove, where I unexpectedly find myself surrounded by myriads of leaves, like fellow voyagers, which seem to have the same purpose or want of purpose with myself. See this great fleet of scattered leaf boats which we paddle amid in this smooth river bay, each one curled up on every side by the sun's skill, each nerve a stiff spruce knee, like boats of hide, and of all patterns, Charon's boat probably among the rest, and some with lofty prows and poops like the stately vessels of the ancients, scarcely moving in the sluggish current, like the great fleets, the dense Chinese cities of boats with which you mingle on entering some great mart, some New York or Canton, which we are all steadily approaching together. How gently each has been deposited on the water. No violence has been used towards them yet, though perchance palpitating hearts were present at the launching. And painted ducks too, the splendid wood duck among the rest, often come to sail and float amid the painted leaves, barks of a nobler model still. What wholesome herb drinks are to be had in the swamps now! What strong, medicinal, but rich scents from the decaying leaves, the rain falling on the freshly dried herbs and leaves, and filling the pools and ditches into which they have dropped, thus clean and rigid, will soon convert them into tea, green, black, brown, and yellow teas, of all degrees of strength, enough to set all nature a-gossiping. Whether we drink them or not, as yet, before their strength is drawn, these leaves, dried on great nature's coppers, are of such various pure and delicate tints as might make the fame of oriental teas. How they are mixed up, of all species, oak and maple and chestnut and birch! But nature is not cluttered with them. She is a perfect husbandman. She stores them all. Consider what a vast crop is thus annually shed on the earth. This, more than any mere grain or seed, is the great harvest of the year. The trees are now repaying the earth with interest what they have taken from it. They are discounting. They are about to add a leaf's thickness to the depth of the soil. This is the beautiful way in which nature gets her muck, while I chaffer with this man and that, who talks to me about sulphur and the cost of carting. We are all the richer for their decay. I am more interested in this crop than in the English grass alone, or in the corn. It prepares the virgin mould for future cornfields and forests, on which the earth fattens. It keeps our homestead in good heart. For beautiful variety, no crop can be compared with this. Here it is not merely the plain yellow of the grains, but nearly all the colours that we know, the brightest blue not excepted. The early blushing maple, the poison sumac, blazing its sins as scarlet, the mulberry ash, the rich chrome yellow of the poplars, the brilliant red huckleberry, with which the hills' backs are painted, like those of sheep. The frost touches them, and, with the slightest breath of returning day, or jarring of earth's axle, see in what showers they come floating down. The ground is all party-coloured with them, but they still live in the soil, whose fertility and bulk they increase, and in the forests that spring from it. They stoop to rise, to mount higher in coming years, by subtle chemistry, climbing by the sap in the trees, and the sapling's first fruits, thus shed, transmuted at last, may adorn its crown when in after years it has become the monarch of the forest. It is pleasant to walk over the beds of these fresh, crisp, and rustling leaves. How beautifully they go to their graves! How gently lay themselves down and turn to mould, painted of 1,000 hues, and fit to make the beds of us living. So they troop to their last resting place, light and frisky. They put on no weeds, but merrily they go scampering over the earth, selecting the spot, choosing a lot, ordering no iron fence, whispering all through the woods about it. Some choosing the spot where the bodies of men are mouldering beneath, and meeting them halfway. How many flutterings before they rest quietly in their graves! They that soared so loftily, how contentedly they return to dust again, and are laid low, resigned to lie and decay at the foot of the tree, and afford nourishment to new generations of their kind, as well as to flutter on high. They teach us how to die. One wonders if the time will ever come when men, with their boasted faith in immortality, will lie down as gracefully and as ripe, with such an Indian summer serenity will shed their bodies as they do their hair and nails. When the leaves fall, the whole earth is a cemetery, pleasant to walk in. I love to wander and muse over them in their graves. Here are no lying nor vain epitaphs. What, though you own no lot at Mount Auburn, your lot is surely cast somewhere in this vast cemetery, which has been consecrated from of old. You need attend no auction to secure a place. There is room enough here. The loosestrife shall bloom, and the huckleberry bird sing over your bones. The woodman and hunter shall be your sextons, and the children shall tread upon the borders as much as they will. Let us walk in the cemetery of the leaves. This is your true Greenwood cemetery. The End of Fallen Leaves by Henry David Thoreau.
The Fires of Autumn. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bill Moseley. The Fires of Autumn by A. A. Milne, from If I May. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Number 9. The Fires of Autumn. The most important article of furniture in any room is the fireplace. For half the year we sit round it, warming ourselves at its heat. For the other half of the year we continue to sit round it, moved thereto by habit and the position of the chairs. Yet how many people choose their house by reason of its fireplaces, or having chosen it for some other reason, spend their money on a new grate rather than on a new sofa or a grand piano? Not many. For one who has so chosen his house, the lighting of the first fire is something of a ceremony. But in any case, the first fire of the autumn is a notable event. Much as I regret the passing of summer, I cannot help rejoicing in the first autumn days, days so cheerful and so very much alive. By November, the freshness has left them. One's thoughts go backwards regretfully to August, or forwards hopefully to April. But while October lasts, one can still live in the present. It is in October that one tastes again the delights of the fireside, and finds them to be even more attractive than one had remembered. But though I write October, let me confess that, coal controller or no coal controller, it was in September that I lit my first fire this year. Perhaps as the owner of a new and, as I think, very attractive grate, I may be excused. There was some doubt as to whether a fireplace so delightful could actually support a fire, a doubt which had to be resolved as soon as possible. The match was struck with all solemnity. The sticks caught up the flame from the dying paper, and handed it on to the coal. In a little while the coal had made room for the logs, and the first autumn fire was in being. Among the benefits which the war has brought to London, and a little less uncertain than some, is the log fire. In the country we have always burnt logs, with the air of one who was thus identifying himself with the old English manner, but in London never, unless it were those ship's logs which gave off a blue flame and very little else, but seemed to bring the fact that we were an island people more closely home to us. Now wood fires are universal. Whether the air will be purer in consequence and fogs less common, let the scientists decide. But we are all entitled to the opinion that our drawing rooms are more cheerful for the change. However, if you have a wood fire, you must have a pair of bellows. I know a man who always calls them bellas, which is, I believe, the professional pronunciation. He also talks about a hussif and a cold chisel. A cold chisel is apparently the ordinary sort of chisel which you chisel with. What a hot chisel is, I never discovered. But whether one calls them bellows or bellas, in these days one cannot do without them. They are as necessary to a wood fire as a poker is to a coal fire, and they serve much the same purpose. There is something very soothing about poking a fire, even if one's companions point out that one is doing it all wrong, and offer an exhibition of the correct method. To play upon a wood fire with a bellows gives one the same satisfaction, and is just as pleasantly annoying to the onlookers. They alone know how to rouse the dying spark, and fan it gently to a flame until the whole log is a triumphant blaze again. You, they tell you, are merely blowing the whole thing out. It is necessary, then, that the bellows-making industry should revive. My impression is that a pair of bellows is usually catalogued under the heading Antique Furniture, and I doubt if it is possible to buy a pair anywhere but in an old furniture shop. There must be a limit to the number of these available, a limit which has very nearly been reached. Here is a chance for our ironmongers, or carpenters, or upholsterers, or whoever have the secret of it. Let them get to work before we are swamped with German bellows. It is no use to offer us pokers with which to keep our log fires burning. We must have wind. There is one respect in which I must confess that the coal fire has the advantage of the wood fire. If your favorite position is on the hearthrug with your back to whatever is burning, your right hand gesticulating as you tell your hearers what is wrong with the confounded government, then it does not greatly matter what brings you that pleasant dorsal warmth which inspires you to such eloquence. But if your favorite position is in an armchair facing the fire, and your customary habit one of passive thought rather than of active speech, then you will not get those visions from the burning wood which the pictures in a coal fire bring you. There are no deep, glowing caverns in the logs from which friendly faces wink back at you as your head begins gently to nod to them. Perhaps it is as well. These are not the days for quiet reflection, but for action. At least, people tell me so, and I am very glad to hand on the information. End of The Fires of Autumn by A. Milne. Recording by Bill Moseley, Llano County, Texas, USA. When the Frost is on the Pumpkin. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bill Moseley. When the Frost is on the Pumpkin by James Whitcomb Riley. From The Wit and Humor of America, Volume 1. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Number 9. When the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock, and you hear the kyuk and gobble of the strutting turkey cock, and the clacking of the guineas and the clucking of the hens, and the rooster's hallelujah as he tiptoes on the fence, oh, it's then's the time a feller is a-feelin' at his best, with the rising sun to greet him from a night of gracious rest, as he leaves the house bareheaded and goes out to feed the stock, when the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock. There's something kind of hearty-like about the atmosphere when the heat of summer's over and the coolin' fall is here. Of course, we miss the flowers and the blossoms on the trees, and the mumble of the hummin' birds and the buzzin' of the bees, but the air's so appetizin', and the landscape through the haze of a crisp and sunny morning of the early autumn days is a picture that no painter has the coloring to mock, when the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock. The husky, rusty rustle of the tassels of the corn, and the rasping of the tangled leaves as golden as the morn. The stubble in the furries kind o' lonesome like, but still a preachin' sermons to us of the barns they growed to fill, the straw stack in the medder, and the reaper in the shed, the hosses in their stalls below, the clover overhead. Oh, it sets my heart a-clickin' like the tickin' of a clock, when the frost is on the pumpkin and the fodder's in the shock. End of When the Frost is on the Pumpkin, by James Whitcomb Riley. Recording by Phil Mosley, Llano County, Texas, USA. Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving Proclamation. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bill Mosley. Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving Proclamation by Secretary of State William Seward. From The Collected Works of Abraham Lincoln. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, No. 9. Proclamation of Thanksgiving, Washington, D.C., October 3rd, 1863. By the President of the United States of America, a proclamation. The year that is drawing towards its close has been filled with the blessings of fruitful fields and healthful skies. To these bounties, which are so constantly enjoyed that we are prone to forget the source from which they come, others have been added, which are of so extraordinary a nature that they cannot fail to penetrate and soften even the heart which is habitually insensible to the ever-watchful providence of Almighty God. In the midst of a civil war of unequaled magnitude and severity, which has sometimes seemed to the foreign states to invite and to provoke their aggression, peace has been preserved with all nations, order has been maintained, the laws have been respected and obeyed, and harmony has prevailed everywhere except in the theater of military conflict, while that theater has been greatly contracted by the advancing armies and navies of the Union. Needful diversions of wealth and of strength from the fields of peaceful industry to the national defense have not arrested the plow, the shuttle, or the ship. The axe has enlarged the borders of our settlements, and the mines, as well of iron and coal as of the precious metals, have yielded even more abundantly than heretofore. Population has steadily increased, notwithstanding the waste that has been made in the camp, the siege, and the battlefield, and the country, rejoicing in the consciousness of augmented strength and vigor, is permitted to expect continuance of years with large increase of freedom. No human counsel hath devised, nor hath any mortal hand worked out these great things. They are the gracious gifts of the Most High God, who, while dealing with us in anger for our sins, hath nevertheless remembered mercy. It has seemed to me fit and proper that they should be solemnly, reverently, and gratefully acknowledged, as with one heart and one voice, by the whole American people. I do therefore invite my fellow citizens in every part of the United States, and also those who are at sea, and those who are sojourning in foreign lands, to set apart and observe, the last Thursday of November next, as a day of thanksgiving and praise to our beneficent Father, who dwelleth in the heavens. And I recommend to them that while offering up the ascriptions justly due to him for such singular deliverances and blessings, they do also, with humble penitence for our national perverseness and disobedience, commend to his tender care all those who have become widows, orphans, mourners, or sufferers in the lamentable civil strife in which we are unavoidably engaged, and fervently implore the interposition of the Almighty hand to heal the wounds of the nation, and to restore it as soon as may be consistent with the divine purposes to the full enjoyment of peace, harmony, tranquillity, and union. In testimony whereof, I have hereunto set my hand, and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington, this 3rd day of October, in the year of our Lord 1863, and of the independence of the United States the 88th. By the President, Abraham Lincoln. William H. Seward, Secretary of State. End of Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving Proclamation, by William Seward. Recording by Bill Moseley, Llano County, Texas, USA.
November. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. November, by Thomas Hood. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Number 9. No sun, no moon, no morn, no noon, no dawn, no dusk, no proper time of day, no sky, no earthly view, no distance looking blue, no road, no street, no t'other side the way, no end to any row, no indications where the crescents go, no top to any steeple, no recognitions of familiar people, no courtesies for showing 'em, no knowing 'em, no travelling at all, no locomotion, no inkling of the way, no notion, no go, by land or ocean, no mail, no post, no news from any foreign coast, no park, no ring, no afternoon gentility, no company, no nobility, no warmth, no cheerfulness, no healthful ease, no comfortable feel in any member, no shade, no shine, no butterflies, no bees, no fruits, no flowers, no leaves, no birds. November. End of November, by Thomas Hood, read by Patrick Wallace. October. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. October, by Edward Thomas. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Number 9. The green elm, with the one great bough of gold, lets leaves into the grass slip, one by one. The short hill grass, the mushrooms, small, milk white, harebell and scabious and tormentil, that blackberry and gorse, in dew and sun, bow down to. And the wind travels too light to shake the fallen birch leaves from the fern. The gossamers wander at their own will. At heavier steps than birds the squirrels scold. The rich scene has grown fresh again and new as spring, and to the touch is not more cool than it is warm to the gaze. And now I might as happy be as earth is beautiful, were I some other, or with earth could turn in alternation of violet and rose, harebell and snowdrop at their season due, and gorse that has no time not to be gay. But if this be not happiness, who knows? Some day I shall think this a happy day, and this mood by the name of melancholy shall no more blackened and obscured be. End of October by Edward Thomas. Read by Patrick Wallace. To Autumn. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. To Autumn by John Keats. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, No. 9. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run; to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core; to swell the gourd, and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel; to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swathe and all its twined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look thou watchest the last oozings, hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. End of To Autumn by John Keats. Read by Patrick Wallace.
A Word for Autumn. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Steve Toner. A Word for Autumn by A. Milne from Not That It Matters. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, No. 9. Last night the waiter put the celery on with the cheese, and I knew that summer was indeed dead. Other signs of autumn there may be, the reddening leaf, the chill in the early morning air, the misty evenings, but none of these comes home to me so truly. There may be cool mornings in July. In a year of drought, the leaves may change before their time. It is only with the first celery that summer is over. I knew all along that it would not last. Even in April I was saying that winter would soon be here. Yet somehow it had begun to seem possible lately that a miracle might happen, that summer might drift on and on through the months, a final upheaval to crown a wonderful year. The celery settled that. Last night with the celery, autumn came into its own. There is a crispness about celery that is of the essence of October. It is as fresh and clean as a rainy day after a spell of heat. It crackles pleasantly in the mouth. Moreover, it is excellent, I am told, for the complexion. One is always hearing of things which are good for the complexion, but there is no doubt that celery stands high on the list. After the burns and freckles of summer, one is in need of something. How good that celery should be there at one's elbow. A week ago, a little more cheese, waiter? A week ago, I grieved for the dying summer. I wondered how I could possibly bear the waiting, the 8 long months till May. In vain to comfort myself with the thought that I could get through more work in the winter undistracted by thoughts of cricket grounds and country houses. In vain, equally, to tell myself that I could stay in bed later in the mornings. Even the thought of after-breakfast pipes in front of the fire left me cold. But now, suddenly, I am reconciled to autumn. I see quite clearly that all good things must come to an end. The summer has been splendid, but it has lasted long enough. This morning I welcomed the chill in the air. This morning I viewed the falling leaves with cheerfulness. And this morning I said to myself, why, of course, I'll have celery for lunch. More bread, waiter? Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, said Keats, not actually picking out celery in so many words, but plainly including it in the general blessings of the autumn. Yet what an opportunity he missed by not concentrating on that precious root. Apples, grapes, nuts, and vegetable marrows he mentions specially, and how poor a selection, for apples and grapes are not typical of any month, so ubiquitous are they. Vegetable marrows are vegetables per year, and have no place in any serious consideration of the seasons. Well, as for nuts, have we not a national song which asserts distinctly, "Here we go gathering nuts in May"? Season of mists and mellow celery, then let it be. A pat of butter underneath the bough, a wedge of cheese, a loaf of bread, and thou. How delicate are the tender shoots unfolded layer by layer. Of what a whiteness is the last baby one of all. Of what a sweetness his flavor. It is well that this should be the last rite of the meal, Finis coronat opus, so that we may go straight on to the business of the pipe. Celery demands a pipe rather than a cigar, and it can be eaten better in an inn or a London tavern than in the home. Yes, and it should be eaten alone, for it is the only food which one really wants to hear oneself eat. Besides, in company one may have to consider the wants of others. Celery is not a thing to share with any man. Alone in your country inn you may call for the celery, but if you are wise you will see that no other traveller wanders into the room. Take warning from one who has learnt a lesson. One day I lunched alone at an inn, finishing with cheese and celery. Another traveller came in and lunched too. We did not speak. I was busy with my celery. From the other end of the table he reached across for the cheese. That was all right. It was the public cheese. But he also reached across for the celery, my private celery for which I owed. Foolishly, you know how one does, I had left the sweetest and crispest shoots till the last, tantalizing myself pleasantly with the thought of them. Horror to see them snatched from me by a stranger. He realized later what he had done and apologized, but of what good is an apology in such circumstances? Yet at least the tragedy was not without its value. Now one remembers to lock the door. Yes, I can face the winter with calm. I suppose I had forgotten what it was really like. I had been thinking of the winter as a horrid, wet, dreary time fit only for professional football. Now I can see other things. Crisp and sparkling days, long, pleasant evenings, cheery fires. Good work shall be done this winter. Life shall be lived well. The end of the summer is not the end of the world. Here's to October, and waiter, some more celery. End of A Word for Autumn by A. A. Milne.